Good evening and welcome to the Monday, September 23rd, 2024 regular board meeting. Appropriate notice has been advertised. Roll call, please.
Mr. Chu?
Here.
Mr. Craig?
Here.
Mrs. Maya?
Here.
Mrs. Mikulski?
Here.
Have we heard from Mrs. Savarino? Or?
No.
Okay. Mrs. Seltzer?
Here.
Mrs. Sharon Celia?
Here.
Mrs. Sherman?
Here.
Mr. Dilkus?
Here.
Mrs. Caden?
Here, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. We have some good presentations for you this evening. We are beginning with recognition of the 23-24 Collingswood Staff Members of the Year. So at this time, I'm going to let am I right in thinking that we've got other folks that are going to take over the presenting of these folks?
Yes, normally the school leader does the intro and then
Okay, so I am going to let all of you who are presenting take it over. I'm assuming we are starting, if I'm looking at the order of operations, with Mr. Kulak. You got to go way over in the corner, Mr. Kulak. Thank you. So that everyone at home can also hear the wonderful things you have to say about Ms. Lair.
Okay.
All right, good evening, everybody. My name is Brian Kulak. I'm the proud principal of Tatum Elementary. This is my second straight year giving one of these. Last year, we honored Cecilia Taglang, and this year, we're here to honor Morgan Lair. So last year when I was up here, I made an extended analogy about The Office. So how Cecilia and I are Michael and Pam. I'm not going to do that again, but I was thinking more about how Morgan and I came to work together. So I started at Tatum 7 years ago in a switch with Miss McPartland. And when I got there, I knew that the staff I was inheriting from Miss McPartland was insanely talented, and I didn't have to do a whole lot of managing, just more listening and learning. But what I didn't know when that change happened was I was also going to be getting the greatest free agent signing in the history of elementary education, which was Morgan. So when I found out she was coming over from Garfield, I thought it was a joke. And then I felt really bad for Mark and the people over at Garfield, but I was really happy for me and the people at Tatum. Since then, she has completely transformed, at that time, a still pretty fledgling special ed department, and made it one with, at the time, Kelly Gibbons, and now with Gabby Scala, this dynamic, empathetic, compassionate, maternal experience for our kids who need help the most. If you are with her, you are learning, and that includes adults. I've learned so much from her just in small conversations and observations, in constant dojo point dinging. If you go into her room, she's always celebrating the kids with dojo points. I know her parents, a couple of which are here tonight, are so thrilled that she's in their child's life. There are constantly presents coming in to Miss Lair's room, thank you notes, hugs. There was people honking today outside as we stood on door duty together, screaming congratulations. These things are not normal. And I've been saying this for a while about Tatum. I just don't think it's normal for parents to honk and shout loudly because we're so enamored with their children as teachers. So as I see these sea of blue shirts, there's a lot of people we could talk about tonight. But for us at Tatum, our Bryce Harper is Morgan Lair.
So thank you, Dr. McDowell, Ms. Caden, all the members of the board. Thank you to my family, my husband Michael, my daughters Betty and Jane for their unconditional love and support. Thank you, Mr. Kulak, for those kind words. And thank you also, Brian, for creating an atmosphere at Tatum where each student and teacher, where we feel seen, valued, and we are connected to each other. It is that connection that ignites so many sparks in our education and in our learning. And I would not be standing here without all the connections that I've made across my time in Collingswood, from my first 12 years at Garfield, working and growing along some of the finest educators, colleagues, teachers, and friends, and then joining the Tatum staff, who welcomed me with open arms. I am the teacher that I am because of all that I've learned from you, the challenges we face together, the challenges that and the way we can overcome adversity and empower each other and empower our students to be the best that they can be, and how they help us be the best that we can be. I'm standing here because of those connections that I've made with all of you. Thank you.
Continuing right down the line, I think Dr. McMullen is going to introduce Mr. Mosier.
Good evening. I think I'm going to vary from the script a little bit because I have two people I can introduce this evening. And I'd like to start with Miss Marion Doherty because I see Theo might want to go to bed soon. So we're going to start with Miss Marion Doherty, if that's okay. Good evening. It is my distinct honor to speak about Mrs. Marion Doherty, the CMS Support Staff Member of the Year. Mrs. Doherty, or the former Miss Voltano, has deep roots in our community, and she is a proud 2005 Collingswood High School graduate and a member of the 2001 8th grade class at Collingswood Middle School. She's been employed by the Collingswood School District since 2013, and she's worked at both Newby and Zane North schools. And since 2016, she's worked at Collingswood Middle School as an instructional assistant in our pre-vocational special ed program with Miss Elaine Gizzo. During her time at the middle school, I've witnessed firsthand the care, concern, compassion, and pure love that Miss Doherty has for the students. She motivates and inspires students to believe in themselves as she nurtures and supports them on their journey to reach their full potential. And it's truly amazing to witness this dynamic interaction between Mrs. Doherty and her students. In addition to the beautiful and important contributions that Miss Doherty makes in the classroom, she also significantly and positively contributes to our broader community. This community involvement began a quarter of a century ago when I was much younger, in 1999, as an actor in the Collingswood Youth Theater program. And in that program, she remained well past her acting days in a variety of volunteer roles. And in 2021, she assumed the massive responsibilities of director of the Collingswood Youth Theater program. And during her decades of service and involvement in youth theater, I've seen her share the same qualities that she demonstrates in the classroom with the participants in youth theater. She absolutely makes magic, be it on the stage or in the classroom. A couple of years ago, Miss Doherty masterfully directed the Collingswood Youth Theater production of Peter Pan. And there's some lines in the song, I've Got to Crow, that nicely sum up the confidence and self-empowerment that she instills in all of the students with whom she works. I'll spare you from singing it unless you really want me to. But I'll recite those lines while exercising a little editorial license. It's just that I am what I am, and I'm me. When I look at myself and I see in myself all the wonderful things I see, If I'm pleased with myself, I have every good reason to be, and I am so happy that I got to crow about the wonderful Marion Doherty. Members of the Board of Education, distinguished audience, I would like to introduce you to our CMS Support Staff Member of the Year, Ms. Marion Doherty.
All right. Say, thank you so much, Dr. McMullen, for that walk down memory lane. Yes, I have been here forever. And thanks to my school colleagues for this amazing honor. It's been a pleasure working for the same district that I grew up in. It's definitely something when I'm walking down the same hallways I used to be with the kids that I work with at the same age. Working with my students, I work with kids mostly with autism. Some of them are nonverbal. So it's still so rewarding every day because I get to see the growth and change in them. Seeing just the smallest achievement in them makes me smile and makes me know that the hard days are worth it. Again, I want to thank my colleagues, especially my dream team, Miss Elaine Gizzo, who was also the Teacher of the Year 2 years ago, Joe McLaughlin, Tracy Charlesworth, Robert Thompson, and Miss Lee. Special thanks to my family who are here tonight, my husband Dan and my son Theo, for supporting me every day. As Dr. McMullen says, it always happens in the middle, but for me, it all happens in my classroom in room 109. Thank you.
Theo, you can stay if you want. You don't have to go to bed. No? Okay. I think he approved. All right. At this time, I am pleased to have the opportunity to introduce our Collingswood Middle School Teacher of the Year, Mr. Jack Mosher. Mr. Mosher is a proud graduate of West Virginia University, and he began his teaching career in the Mountain State. In 2006, West Virginia's loss became Collingswood's gain as Mr. Mosher joined our school district as a teacher at Mark Newby School. In 2008, Newby's loss became Collingswood Middle School's gain as he moved to CMS and joined the math department, first as a 6th grade math teacher and most recently as a 7th grade math teacher. Mr. Mosher is a remarkable educator who exemplifies what it means to be a consummate team player. His dedication to fostering positive relationships with students and colleagues alike has created an atmosphere of collaboration and support within our school. Through engaging lessons that spark curiosity and inspire learning, Mr. Mosher not only teaches math, but also models resilience, growth mindset, and teamwork for his students. It's no wonder that our students look up to him not just as a teacher, but as a mentor and a role model. They say a good math teacher is a master of two things, mathematics and the art of teaching. For me, that statement really highlights the dual expertise required to be an effective math teacher and the dual expertise that Mr. Mosher possesses. He has the innate ability to balance deep knowledge of his subject matter with the ability to engage and inspire students, while at the same time building their confidence as math learners and making the learning relatable and fun. And speaking of fun, I'd like to conclude my remarks and introduce Mr. Mosher by sharing a math anecdote that I know he will appreciate. Here we go. There once was a talking sheepdog. He ran up to the farmer and said, "All 70 sheep are in the pen." The farmer said, "But I only counted 67. To which the sheepdog replied, "Yeah, but I rounded them up." Members of the Board of Education and our illustrious audience, please join me in congratulating Mr. Mosher.
Good evening. How's everyone doing? Just want to say thank you so much to the board for having me here tonight, Dr. McMullen, for those great, well, the anecdote, obviously, right? So, as he said, I came here in 2006 not knowing really anything about the town of Collingswood, the borough of Collingswood. I grew up about a half an hour south, was transplanted to West Virginia, came home, and this is where I landed, not knowing really anything. But over the years, everyone has been so kind and welcoming, and I've really enjoyed assimilating myself into your community, serving your community, your children. Several of you, I've had more than one of your kids over the years, and it's been a true honor to show up here in Collingswood every day. And just thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Mr. Newman is going to speak on behalf of Ms. Balaban.
Good evening, everyone. So it's my honor to be able to, now I don't think my Bryce Harper is here tonight. Katie, are you here? Did you come out? No? That's okay, because I still want to be able to just pay it, honor her with these words. I think when I first came on board last year as principal, I know, you know who gets down and dirty and gets busy in the building, right, and just makes things happen. I knew that coming in, that Katie was one of those individuals. And so what I like about it the most is that she does it at a level where she just keeps going and going and going, and you always see the kids constantly responding to her and giving back. And she'll give it back, and she'll, but you see that exchange of the dialogue that goes back between, her and the students, and how she continuously makes that 12th grade year memorable. And the reason why I say that is because she is one of the advisors for 12th grade. But like I wrote it out. Let me read this, and I'm going to say some words about her. It is my honor to celebrate an extraordinary educator whose passion, dedication, and commitment to our school have made a profound impact in the countless lives of our students. The Teacher of the Year, which is Miss Katie Balaban, is an extraordinary honor that she should definitely, enjoy and embrace. She's kind of humbled. So when I talked to her, I said, what are some things that you'd like for me to say about you? I think I caught her like a deer in the headlights, like, you can brag about yourself. It's okay. This is a good thing, Still haven't gotten anything from her, But it's okay because I get it. Some people, that's just not me, And so, but I do want to brag about her. I want to just talk some more about, who she is. She is an invaluable member of our faculty, and she's been doing this for many years. I believe she and I actually came on board at the same time in 2013. Inspiring students with her love of history and her ability to create a dynamic and engaging learning environment. Again, she's here to teach, and she gets busy. Those students in there, they work, they enjoy. There's that dialogue that goes back and forth. She is an awesome, awesome instructor. Her classroom is a place where students feel empowered and explore the past. They analyze complex issues and develop critical thinking skills. Beyond her exceptional teaching abilities, Ms. Balaban is also a tireless advocate for our students, serving as the 12th grade class advisor and coordinating a variety of senior activities, including the prom, the senior trip, and other memorable events. Her dedication to ensuring that our seniors have a meaningful and enjoyable graduation year is truly, truly commendable. When I see her, and she works with her partner, Jeff Herman, they spend countless hours just making sure that it happens, just making sure that our kids in their senior year, when they walk away, they're going to think about a lot of different things, but they think about the prom. They think about what happened on the class trip. They think about the different experiences that they had in that 12th grade year. And it doesn't just happen. You have busy bees that make that happen, and she is one of those busy bees that, again, creating memories for those students. When they think of fond memories with regards to Collingswood, she's one of the reasons why that happens. To take it to another level, she is one of the ones that helps to create, the fall blood drive. So obviously that's about service. It's about students understanding, the importance behind that. Again, I say behind that because she works, closely with Mr. Herman. But she is instrumental in organizing the fall blood drives, helping to save lives and promote a cultural service. If she was here, I would tell her passion for teaching and her dedication to students. It's truly a commitment that she embraces that we see. She is an inspiration for all of us as far as the building is concerned, but I'm definitely glad to have her as one of my busy bees in the building. So that's Miss Katie Balabine. Now, Katie, if you were here, I'd be high-fiving you and hugging you.
We wanted to honor and acknowledge the Instructional Assistant of the Year that was at Zane North Elementary, Ms. Lynn Tryfin. She is not here this evening because she has retired and is thoroughly enjoying her retirement and not spending it at the Board of Ed, so congrats to her. And last but certainly not least, Mr. Patrick Weisberger is going to talk about Travis Grant.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Pat Weisgerber, and I'm the co-director of the Technology Department for Collingswood and Oakland School Districts. I have the privilege of honoring the Support Staff Member of the Year, Travis Grant, tonight. Travis was unable to be in attendance with us tonight due to some personal obligations, but I was happy to inform him that wouldn't stop me from getting up here and embarrassing him a little bit. Next month, Travis will be celebrating his 10th anniversary with the school district. Our department isn't very large. There's only about 6 of us. But in those 10 years that he's been here, we've had more than 20 different staff members pass through our department. And Travis is the only member left on the staff from 10 years ago. This is a great representation of Travis himself. He's loyal, he's dedicated, and he stays until the job is done. Never one to watch the clock and rush out at the end of the day, or push something off until tomorrow because there isn't enough time left to finish. He even comes back after hours to help set up for after-school events that someone needs help with. Travis was the first person I met when I applied for my position here, meeting me at the main office to take me to my interview. And after our short walk, I knew this was a place I wanted to work. People don't call the tech department because things are going great and just to get help whenever it's convenient. People call when things are on fire, when deadlines need to be met yesterday, and you need things working now. And Travis is the person you want in that situation. Always smiling and quick to laugh, Travis walks into the room and immediately has things handled, cracking a joke to ease the stress while also having the knowledge to fix the problems. And on the rare occasion that he can't, he's brilliant enough at adapting to the situation and MacGyvering a solution to get teachers back up and teaching until the problem can be fully resolved. I have said on numerous occasions and will continue to do so for the rest of my tenure here, I don't know how I'd be able to do my job if it wasn't for Travis Grant. Thank you.
Congratulations to all of our staff of the year. Let's give them another round of applause. As I was looking at the list, I was realizing, and I'm looking over at this corner too, because I feel like they'll have the same feeling as I did, that you've been around a while and you've perhaps got a lot of kids when the majority of the people on this list have been, your family has been touched by the expertise of the people on that list. So thank you so much. We have many talented teachers and staff, as we always say at this school district, and congratulations to you all again. On that note, moving on to our second presentation of the evening, we will be hearing from Mr. Jefferson, who will be presenting the 24-25 Restorative Code of Conduct.
Good evening, everyone. And as Patrick is warming up the machine, just wanted to kind of communicate to everyone this evening that we really wanted to take a moment to revisit our restorative practices initiative. And not that this is a restart, but really a situation in which we are shifting from what we believe in and ensuring that we're moving it to a strong commitment. So we want to take a look at our mission and vision statement. By building on the strengths of the diverse school community, Collingswood Oakland Public Schools commit to providing an inclusive and supportive environment that inspires and empowers every student, to foster the qualities necessary for students to serve as contributors to an equitable and socially just community. So what are some of these overarching goals? To solidify expectations of all school community members, staff, students, and families, to reimagine current practices and behavioral responses with a restorative lens, to maximize the time that students are in classroom and learning, to utilize restorative practices to resolve conflicts between students, staff, and families, and to limit exclusionary discipline to extreme circumstances in which safety is compromised. And when we say limit exclusionary discipline, we also understand sometimes that connotation that is received by some individuals is that students are going to no longer be held accountable, but we know that that is not the case. If we're going to have a conversation about these restorative practices, we really have to take a look at disproportionality. Well, what is disproportionality? It's when you have a quantitative number of individuals who have either been overrepresented or underrepresented. An example of that would be if we have a student in which 50% of the students in the school represent male students, and if we had a situation in which those male students represented 68% of the suspensions, then we would say we have an overrepresentation of male students who are being suspended and an underrepresentation of female students who are being suspended, or as we say, excluded from the learning environment when they're missing school. The why? Well, one of the reasons why is we know that the data tells us that we needed to really take a step back and analyze it. Right here on the graph that you're seeing, we have a comparison of CMS population students suspended by group. The blue bar graph shows the total percentage of population of students within the school. The red bar on the graph shows you the percentage that those students were excluded from the learning environment, euphemism for suspended from school. In Collingswood Middle School, we had 63% of the students who are white students, 29% represented the suspended students. Hispanic Latino students were 18%. They represented 41% of the suspended students. Black students were 10% of the building. They represented 18%. Multiple categories were 7% of the school. They represented 12%. And the Asian students represented 2%, and there were 0 suspensions. So what do we have? We have a disproportion in our Hispanic students, showing that Hispanic students were overly represented with the number of students who were suspended. On average, CMS students were suspended for 3 days of school, and an average of 3.4. So what did the specific numbers tell us? We had 17 total students in the middle school who were suspended from school that year for what was the equivalent of 3 months of school. Who was responsible for that? And a level of vulnerability, I'm going to raise my hand, right? Because like the other Mike J said, you got to take a look in the mirror. Now, if we move on to the high school. In the high school, white students represent 47% of the student population, 21% of the suspensions. Hispanic and Latino students, 29% of the population, 34% of the suspensions. Black students, 16% of the population, 35% of the suspensions. Multiple categories, 5% and 6% of the suspensions. And Asians were even with 3% and 3%, which is what the number should look like when you're trying to ensure that you do not have any disproportionalities. In the high school, there were a total of 62 students who were suspended from school for a total of 468 days. The black students and CHS were the group that represented the disproportionality in missing more days of school than any other students. Respectful communication. What are some of the ways that we believe that we're going to be able to move to a commitment and communicate to the community, staff members, and especially our children that we are dedicated to this? First, it starts with respectful communication. All Collingswood School community members deserve a safe, welcoming, inclusive environment and will act respectfully towards students, staff members, and families at all times, in and out of school, including online, with the goals of building relationships, preventing or repairing harm, and addressing root causes of conflict. Our shared humanity and dignity must be protected and honored, and especially in times of heightened stress or emotions. We will refrain from the use of shouting, insulting, threatening, or humiliating others. We must begin and continue to engage in restorative consequences. As I stated, this is a revisit. This is something that we have been working on for years, so we're going to continue the engagement. Conflicts must result in invitations to facilitate restorative conversations. Very quickly, I'm going to stop there and just provide you with an example. We know that restorative practices is synonymous to a restoration of relationships. When a student has been asked to leave the classroom or leave their learning environment, you have a student who's offended. When a teacher has to ask a student to leave the learning environment, you often have a teacher who's offended by the behavior that caused them to have to ask the student to leave. It is very important that we are taking an opportunity to restore these relationships, and we're not just moving forward with status quo. For restorative systems to work, all members of our CPS and OPS school community must be willing to engage in restorative responses in the classroom and at the school level. While participation in the restorative process is voluntary, we are all encouraged to be open. Am I still on it? Yes. I'm good? All righty. Restorative processes are an investment of our time for the good of our school community. Facilitators of restorative conversations serve as neutral parties charged with helping participants honestly explore their responsibility and conflict and repair. And that's kind of the example that I was giving you with ensuring that we're tying up those loose ends. School community expectations: respect all members of the school community, model respectful behavior, build relationships with one another, communicate as openly, honestly, and transparently as possible. Uphold and support a safe, equitable learning environment. Exercise and practice self-awareness. Practice accountability when harm is caused. And support academic success of all students. So we really had to take a step back and really take a look at what are some of the things that we're going to do? What are some of the tangibles? Elevating a student voice project, something that we have going on right now. Reimagining the role of student council. We know what the traditional student council looks like. Fundraising, programs, things of that nature. But how can we take student council and have them assist us with our restorative practices initiative? Actively pursuing additional resources to support professional learning. Taking our money and putting it where our mouth is. improve data tracking, ensuring that we are looking at the numbers and expanding all services for students. Thank you, everyone.
Hang on, Mr. Jefferson, just stay there for 1 second. I just wanted to ask if any board members had any questions about the presentation before we let Mr. Jefferson sit down. I have a, oh, go ahead.
I just had a question. I
Yes.
saw on one of the slides, I think it was about communication, that someone will be helping to facilitate some of these conversations. For example, if a student is asked to remove a classroom, I'm wondering who is going to help engage in those conversations.
Well, that's one of the things that me, with my title of Culture and Climate, my job is to help nourish the mindset, the will, and the skill of all of those students in conjunction with the building leaders. So one of the things that I've been doing, restorative practices, it's not always necessarily after the conflict. One of the things that I've been doing so far this year, people have come to me, some of the APs have come to me and said, we're hearing some things about A and B. And I'm immediately calling those individuals in. We're sitting together and we're having a transparent conversation between us to ensure that in that case, we're healing that relationship before the conflict escalates.
My question was along those same lines as Sarah's, that what are we doing as a district, and I know you're kind of leading these, this charge to help both, it's a two-part question, I guess, both staff and students feel comfortable engaging in these restorative, and comfortable and confident, I should say,
Yes.
engaging in the restorative approach.
Yes, so with staff, we have some ongoing planning and professional development, and that's where I said putting our money where our mouths are. We're really looking at some of the resources, some of the grant money that we have. And that's an example. That's something that started obviously before this year. We're writing grants, we're looking for funding, and we're reaching out to people throughout the entire, that is something that Dr. McDowell and myself, and we're always saying, have you ever heard of this person? Have you ever heard of that person? And we're running those ideas on who are the individuals. Everyone's not a fit, so we really have to have conversation about who it is that you bring in and ensuring that we say, Director of Culture and Climate, that they represent the culture and climate that we also represent. There are some individuals who have the goal of this, but how they see getting there may not line up with how we see it.
Thank you for the presentation, and I think I appreciate the honesty with showing numbers around the disproportionality and us not being where we want to be. And I think in the past we've shied away from sharing information like that. I think it's going to be important in the future to continue to look back at where we were and where we're headed to make sure that we're there. So just encouraged to continue to use data like that and basing this in, are we actually getting to where we want to be, so that we're not letting individual situations or interactions with students to throw off a plan that a lot of thought and attention has gone into.
I agree, and I think it's one thing to stand in front of the room of adults and let them know that we're having this discussion, but it's very important that we let the students know that we had this discussion and we're having it also.
Thank you very much. When can we expect like a touch point during the year to see how these numbers are moving? Do you think in like halfway through the year, the end of the year?
I would say well, I don't want to necessarily provide distorted numbers, and what I mean by that is I want to ensure that we're getting training in front of the teachers. So I can share numbers with you that if necessarily we're sharing those numbers before some of the training has had a chance to take fold. But I would say probably the halfway point is when we want to revisit the numbers.
Or or just an update on what you've been doing and like how the trainings are going. That'd be helpful. Yeah.
I would say probably I could come back in December.
And one more question,
Yep.
though. In addition to the number of students, like the percentages of students, I'd also be interested in like the duration of these suspensions. Like, how does that work out, like among the different groups?
That's difficult. I always tell people context matters, and so sometimes the context of how something happened. I could pull up Genesis Student Information System right now and kind of show you what the offense was. But if you don't have the context that was surrounded around the offense, it's kind of could be misinformation, but I definitely see what you're
See what
saying.
I'm saying? Like, if it's a severe offense, I'm assuming it's to be more days out.
Yes, of
So-
course. Hmm.
Mr. Jefferson, I wanted to echo what has been said about thanking you for the transparency, starting us by rooting us in what is troubling data, but important data for us to look at. I wanted to hear a little bit about what you see as goals for this work. Even if you're still in the early phases of thinking about this, what is the goal that you're trying to reach, and how will you know that you are working toward it?
Well, of course, we know we want the numbers to change, but for me, I think a goal would be when we get to a point where we don't necessarily have administrators who are coming up with these ideas, and it's already begun to shift, but where we get more teachers and staff members and students who are coming up and saying, hey, I have an idea to assist with our restorative practices initiative. And of course, students don't talk like that, right? Students are going to say, I have an idea to install some of the relationships. So when that begins to become communication or verbiage that I would say is going back and forth and also being initiated with students and staff members and teachers, and not single-handedly where it's being dominated by administration and board members and community members, I think that will also be a telltale sign. I don't necessarily know how quantitative some information like that will be. Sometimes you're just going to know. You're just going to feel it.
Oh, sorry, can I ask? Yeah. I really like the focus, and piggybacking on what you just said about enabling student voices and giving them space to kind of take ownership over some of this. I'm wondering if you could tell me a little bit about the Student Voices Project, just like kind of the goals of that and what that entails and how you envision this contributing to this.
Yes. So we've had the opportunity to meet with Dr. Mark Brasoff, who is a community member in Collingswood and is also a college professor. And once again, as I stated before, you want to meet with people, ensure that their vision and they're looking through the same lens that you are. And I think that we walked away from that meeting with Dr. Brasoff definitely feeling as though that we were looking through similar lenses. So right now, Dr. Brasoff is he's coming in midday and meeting with the students for an hour a day, basically 2 days a week. We took some students over the summertime, took 2 days and had Dr. Brasoff train them. We also have 2 staff members, 2 teacher advisors that are working with him. And so one of the questions that he's asking is, what is it that we want to create? Sometimes we talk about this and we don't necessarily know what it is that we want to create. So far, me sitting and being a fly on the wall, because I want to stay out. Sometimes I want to engage in that conversation, but it's Dr. Brasoff's platform, right? So I'm sitting there listening, and that's kind of what I've walked away with right now. What they're still working on is, what is it that they want their school to look like? And of course, we always start off with the question of who is it that we want in the room, and they've already answered that, and that's everyone.
Last question, I promise. And these students, are they, I don't know, like, did they apply? What was the process, to ensure that this is kind of capturing a wide range of students from the school?
What I believe, and I wasn't in the high school at the time, is that there was kind of an interest memo was kind of sent out to students, and some students took the initiative to say that they wanted to be a part.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. Okay, we are moving on to section 4, which is Committee of the Whole. Motion to enter Committee of the Whole.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We are going to just take a little bit of time during Committee of the Whole tonight to talk about next steps and what work, we know what the work is that we need to get done, but a little bit more about how we kind of envision getting there. So I wanted to start off by saying that while it certainly is disappointing that once again our community didn't vote to invest in our school facilities, that was only one part of it. I'm actually really proud of the work that not just went into this plan, but actually what got us here in the first place. I've been on this board for almost 9 years now and have watched the community grow in their willingness to engage in really tough conversations about the needs of all of our students and how we aren't necessarily meeting all of those, and have been willing to have more honest conversations about the fact that the way our system is set up, by no fault of anyone in this room, it's really just history, that there are systemic inequities that exist in our school system in general, but certainly in our elementary school, and that there's been a willingness to talk about it, and that this plan was kind of a culmination of a lot of discussions, and there's been a lot of talk about it, but not a lot of real big action. And it was the start, but certainly not the end. So what we have learned is, we've been going to the community for the last 6 months and having a lot of those really tough conversations about that are kind of were rooted in the need for improvement of our school facilities, right? Because that's what a referendum does. But what's come out of those conversations is a really interesting thing, that even those that everybody that would sit in a room together that did not agree with the plan in terms of what the look of the facilities would be like, or what schools we would be using, what generally came out of those conversations was agreement on the issues themselves, and that we can't just leave them unaddressed anymore. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So first, I want to be clear about what those issues are, and that came up before and during the process of the referendum, but that we've all known have been issues in our district for a long time. So I want to name those as goals of what we are working on, or continuing to work on right now. So first, integration of our elementary school population is a must. The key here is that it has to be intentional. It has to be thoughtful, and it has to be done earlier than it is now. The second thing is inclusive classrooms. We are not serving our students with disabilities in the structure that we currently have, and there is a moral imperative when it comes to both of these two things, right? Integration of students intentionally and at an earlier age that serves them all better, and integration of our learners that learn differently, but that does not mean that they don't have every right to be with their grade level peers just like everyone else does. And even if our structures don't currently serve that, our answer can't be, well, our structures don't currently serve that, so there's nothing that we can do about it. The third, students deserve safe routes to schools. This came up over and over and over again. I have been hearing about this from parents for years. So, the elementary schools is one thing, but we've always talked about the fact that our sending districts in Woodland and Oakland, that this has been an issue for them since they have been coming to our middle and high school. In the coming weeks, we are having meetings with the Department of Transportation and Cross County Connection to really meaningfully begin planning and collaborating with their help, with Chief Carey, to really come up with some better safety transportation plans moving forward. And then finally, we still need improvements to our educational space. That fact doesn't change. We just need to think creatively and differently about how we utilize the space that we already have, because what we have been told by the community with the vote is we have the buildings we have, and we need to figure out how to work within those spaces to best meet our students' needs. That's as much talking about this as I'm going to do at the moment, because this is committee of the whole, and I want all of us to have some time to briefly talk through what we've learned from the last 6 months, and how intentional we want to be with the steps that we're going to take moving forward. So I'm going to turn it over to someone else who wants to turn their mic on.
So, Ray, I think your summary was, lines up with my impression of the whole process, right, over the last 6 months plus of the referendum. I had the opportunity to attend almost all of the roundtable discussions that the district hosted, and I think what you said was right in that a lot of the discussions at those roundtable discussions, regardless of whether or not someone was for or against, supported or didn't support the referendum, folks agreed that there were potential benefits and also just like issues that we had to address, right? And looking at stuff even about how can we get more than one classroom per grade, right, in our buildings. Having talked to a lot of parents in those settings and also elsewhere during this whole last 6 months, understanding the benefits of being able to have multiple classes of the same grade within the same building, right, so that students can get different experiences year to year, can experience different social groups year to year, and then teachers can have support of grade level peers also. That seemed to be a pretty well-received part of the referendum. And as you said, we have to figure out how to best utilize our educational spaces, right, given that the referendum vote was what it was. And I think that is one of the places where we can look at, which can hopefully also support the integration of the elementary population, also more inclusive learning spaces. So that's one of my initial thoughts.
Something I've been thinking about, and I think, you're laying it out as the first goal, Reagan, was really helpful, is this idea of intentional integration. And, I think one of the ways to ensure that what we are doing, in the future is not virtue signaling or performative, is to kind of, it's silly, but it's the same question I asked Mr. Jefferson, like, what are our goals? And how does the way we choose to go about the process of intentionally integrating our students help us meet those goals, right? So it's not just about sort of redistributing kids. It's actually about coming up with really concrete goals for our district, things we want to change, things we want to improve, strengths we want to harness, skills we want to develop, and then doing the job in ways that align with those goals. So I think one of the things I'll be hoping to talk about and look at more is really being intentional and putting the intentional in intentional integration. Yeah.
I really appreciate all the goals that you just listed. I think that matches up pretty clearly with what the goal was here. One of my recommendations, and it's just a thought, we did have a lot of roundtable discussions going into the referendum to explain what the plan was. Now that it didn't pass, I think we should go to each community school and talk to them and find out what it is that they think will work for them. For example, if the Sharp people did not, as on average, think that this plan was going to match up with what the goals were that we had for them, or that we think that they have for themselves, find out what's going to work for them. What do they think we need? What do they want us to do? The same thing with Zane, the same with Tatum, the same with Newbie, the same with Garfield, and really get into the community at a deeper level and just kind of get the pulse on what people actually think we could come up with to make this work.
So I'd like to weigh in, because I think that it's extremely important to really separate the two. And so a bond referendum is a request for funding. It's not a a declaration or anything like that. It really is, it's a request for funding aligned with the goals and objectives. And so what was pretty clear over the last 6 months, regardless of where individuals fell on either side of the vote, was that the goals and the objectives, there was general consensus across the community that the goals and the objectives were sound. And so I just want to make sure that we're being very clear. So the original goals and the objectives of the referendum, first, was to address our overcrowding issue. An offshoot of that was to make sure that all schools reflected the diversity within the community, and being very mindful of what that actually looked like. That work did not take place. But the primary goal of the referendum was to address overcrowding. It was to address the challenges to the facilities that are physically preventing young people from being able to access every single building. And so when you parse that piece out and remove the actual resource, the only thing that we have really, which is the goals. And so when we think about the goals and we break that down in terms of intentional integration is not mix a bunch of black and white kids together. That's not intentional integration. It's not forcing young people with learning differences into environments where they're not successful. What it is that we're taking a very measured, targeted approach to ensuring that the barriers, the structural barriers that currently prevent young people from accessing our facilities are slowly removed. And so when we think about academics, one of the components of intentional integration is that we can no longer continue to ignore concentrations of low academic achievement and poverty in single locations. And so that's not a debate, that's not an argument, that's just a fact. And so when we're looking at what are the core variables, the district is held to a very different standard in terms of student achievement, in terms of rules, in terms of regulations, in terms of access, in terms of compliance. And so I think that, yes, I do believe it's important for us to take a very intimate, targeted level of approach, but I just want to be very clear, this is not a free-for-all in terms of goals and objectives. The goals and objectives have been pretty clear for the last 6 months, and there does seem to be general consensus about what that looks like. In terms of inclusive schools, the example that I give, I'm a Garfield parent. My daughter has friends who live within the confines of Garfield, but because they have an IEP, they're not at Garfield. And so we have to start taking a look at some of those core pieces. And so when we talk about inclusive schools, I want to just make sure that we're all on the same page, is not restricted to elementary as well, because as we heard last month, we have a systemic challenge. Nobody's fault, but historically, in the state of New Jersey, it was focusing on the segregation of kids, putting kids in self-contained classes, and that was the solution. For about the last 15 to 20 years, nationally, there has been a push to move to the least restrictive environment. Change is hard, and sometimes we have to get out of our own way in order to stop creating artificial barriers that are preventing us from being able to do that. Yes, it's extremely important at the elementary school if we're going to have a conversation about intentional integration, but I also don't want us to think that it's only restricted to elementary. I believe that it's a K through 12 issue. And then in terms of safe routes to school, we want to make sure that all of our kids are safe, and so that piece is going to be separate and apart and should take place regardless of the referendum or the goals or objectives connected to that. So I just want to be very mindful what we mean when we say intentional integration. Primary is breaking up concentrations of low academic achievement and concentrations of poverty. And what that will require is that will require a significant and challenging community-based problem-solving project that will change neighborhood catchments. It will change walking paths. It will change trajectories of where programs are or are not created in the long term. But it's the absolute right thing to do. And I just wanted to make sure I put that on for the record.
Could I? Oh. That intentional integration is going to take some time, I understand that, but something that we can do much more immediately, and I did see the passion in these roundtable discussions, is this have safe routes to school. I mean, I think, and again, I'm not speaking for the board, but this would be kind of a good opportunity to get another ad hoc committee together, or, just like we did with the equity committees like 6 years ago, get the community involved, because it is a community issue, and I think we could solve this one quickly. Well, we can get moving on it immediately.
Dr. Bell, based also on what you said, I wanted to make sure that this was clear on the record, something that a lot of folks talked about during these last 6 months that I don't think has been talked about enough in the community, at least since I've been on the board, is that, like, let us be clear that we currently have 5 elementary schools. There's only one which is majority economically disadvantaged students. That same one is also majority minority students, right? And in that one school has vastly different academic outcomes than the other elementary schools. And I just want to make sure that that's clear to our community, that is a fact, and has been a fact for a long time, and that we have to address that, and we have to figure out what structural things as a board we can do to help address those issues. It's something that I was really heartened by during the discussion over the last 6 months, hearing from so many community members saying, yeah, we see that. We might not agree on the current solution that's being presented, but we see that, and we want to work on that and fix that. And so, I want to make sure that that's clear to the community that, yes, that is actually an issue, and that, I appreciate that we are looking for ways to, sooner rather than later, intentionally integrate, solve some of these issues as best as we can, at least from a board perspective, in terms of structures that we can do to support the students, support the teachers, support the community in elevating the outcomes of all of our students.
I wanted to echo also, thank you for articulating that, Roger and Dr. McDowell. Last Tuesday, there were 13 other districts that went to referendum, and 9 of them, including Collingswood's, were rejected. So this is a referendum is at its core a funding question, and I don't think it changes any of the community goals. I think that if you were to ask anyone at Sharp, I'm a Sharp parent, do you want the best for all students? No one is going to say no. And I think that at this juncture, it is the community's goal as a whole. And I agree that there are different ways to approach that solution, but that doesn't change whether you go ask parents at Tatum or you go ask parents at Sharp. And so I think that's really important to keep in mind. This idea of community involvement is important, but this goal is not going to change across the board.
So I just want to, I think I said, we're just going to be a brief conversation because it's just the start of these conversations. There's a lot more work to be done, but I thought that it was important to recognize obviously the elephant in the room of the referendum in general. It's been, nonstop conversation for the past 6 months, but also that the work doesn't stop, as Dr. McDowell would always say, when inevitably the question of, well, what happens if the referendum doesn't pass would come up at every roundtable or any other kind of discussion. And the needs of the students on September 17th and September 18th, there's no difference between those two. And so we wake up the next day and we go to work and we continue finding ways to meet the needs of all of our students, and that part hasn't changed. And what last thing I wanted to say before we wrap up this part of the meeting is that I just hope that now that that part has kind of been, the vote has been taken away, we can come together as a community to really work productively to solve for these issues that we've had a lot of really good discussions about that had parents from every school, some that didn't send their kids to Collingswood schools but live in Collingswood. Those roundtables really brought out a really amazing cross-section of the community, and they were really good conversations to have, and I hope that we can continue them in a really respectful and intentional way, that everyone is here to do what they can for the kids. If we can all come together and recognize that that's what we're here for, and we're not here for any sort of nefarious reasons, I think that would be great. I think the kids deserve that. Put all the other stuff behind us and actually just get to work for the kids, because that's what really matters. With that, motion to exit committee of the whole. And a second?
Second.
All in favor? So at this time, I am going to say goodbye to you all. It is my birthday, and my birthday present to myself is that I am now going to go home and spend the rest of the evening with my loved ones. So it was lovely seeing all of you, but I'm going to eat the wonderful cookies that Kelly made for me and spend the rest of the night with my family. So the lovely Kate Seltzer is going to take over and be gentle. And I'm going to ask Roger if he'll just be back up in case, back up for bathroom breaks or such, whatever's needed. And have a good night.
Happy birthday.
All right, good evening, everyone. So we are going to move into future dates and miscellaneous information, and there are a few things here. As always, you should look for your child's school's PTA meeting. Also, Lashana Tova to the Jewish members of our community who will be celebrating the High Holy Days in the next month. Other than that, there are some fun fall-related things that will probably catch your attention. I know we'll be attending some of those in my family. Let's move on to routine business. So I need a motion to approve the minutes of the August 2024 board meeting.
So moved.
And a second? Second. All in favor? All right, that brings us to our first opportunity for public comment. The purpose of this public comment section is to discuss items listed on the agenda. Additionally, more general comments may be made later in the meeting. The public is reminded that attempts to resolve all concerns and complaints should go first through appropriate staff members and administrators. The intent of public comment is to give the community opportunity to provide feedback to the board. We will be actively listening and taking notes so that we can take all that is being said into consideration. If appropriate, clarifying comments may be made at the end of the public comment section. For more detailed responses to concerns, communication may go out later in the week by the appropriate staff members or administrators, or be discussed by the board during future committee meetings. Members of the public are welcome to speak and expected to do so with the utmost sensitivity for everyone in attendance. In fairness to all who wish to speak, there is a strict 3-minute time limit per person during public comment. Please remember to state your name and address for the record, and Ms. Coleman will be timing you, and we'll give you a heads up when your time is up. I thought you were going to make it really easy on me.
It's
No,
going to
just
be.
kidding.
It's going to be. I don't know if this is the right time for it. So if it's not, I'll come. If it's not, I'll come later. So.
It has to just be related to an agenda item.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, as far as the recognition. I'm sorry. My
name and
yeah, my
address,
name is
please.
Tom Howard. I live at 16 Fraser Avenue. I just wanted to speak in about the recognition of teachers. That now's the right time. Okay. Oh, great. Okay. I just wanted to echo comments before to congratulate the teachers who were being acknowledged for the great service. Specifically, I want to talk about Mrs. Lair. My daughter has Mrs. Lair, and she absolutely loves her, and she has made great strides with her. She has dyslexia and has had a difficult time, and Mrs. Lair has really helped her along, and we are noticing some really great strides in her confidence and her reading, and we can't say enough great things about Mrs. Lair, so I just wanted to echo the kudos that she got, and she's awesome, so thank you.
Hear, 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 hear. Okay. Thank you very much. Next, we are going to turn it over to Dr. McDowell for the superintendent's report.
So, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Section 8.01, 2, 3, and 4, due to the timing of the meeting, the reports will be presented at the October 2024 meeting. Just have just a few announcements. One, just really wanted to second what Tom said and just reiterate all of our educators of the year. This year we get to actually celebrate them for the full year. They represent the best and the brightest among us, and we're so thankful to have them here within our districts. In terms of back to school, we're extremely pleased to welcome students and staff back. And as you have been able to see, the energy back to have everyone back in the buildings has been infectious. There will continue to be information presented weekly by schools through their weekly newsletters. And so please stay tuned and stay connected to your child's school for those details. I want to publicly commend our middle school leadership team and staff for their response to a serious incident that took place on September 19th. And so on September 19th, we updated the school community about an incident at the middle school. It involved a potential threat which was addressed immediately by the administration. Our administrators followed all procedures for threat assessment, including the notification of the police department, who responded promptly. The incident is currently under investigation, and there has been no immediate or credible threat to any of our schools, specifically our secondary campus. Local law enforcement are exercising their due diligence and continuing to investigate, and we will continue to work closely with them as they conclude their investigation. So subsequently, we would enact any additional actions that may be required by local law enforcement as a result of this investigation. Due to the privacy rights of the student and the families involved in this incident, we are not at liberty to share any other actions taken by the school in connection with the situation. Please be assured that we are taking all active steps in order to continue to manage the situation to ensure that students and staff feel both comfortable and safe. Any student experiencing stress or anxiety around this subject can stop by the counseling office or the main office or even the wellness center for additional support. And so as an additional follow-up, our CMS administration reminded the student body of the responsibility that we all have for both our actions and our words, and emphasized that even the comments made as a joke or for shock value can result in very serious consequences. Our administrators are also requesting that the student body refrain from gossip and the spreading of rumors or false information, as these actions are irresponsible and only serve to further inflame the situation, which individually was extremely serious. They will further encourage students to also continue to report anything that they hear or witness that relates either to their person or to their school. So student and staff safety will continue to be our priority as a district, and we will also continue to adhere to all safety and security protocols in partnership with local law enforcement. And specifically, we'd like to thank the students who came forward and shared pertinent information with school officials needed to address this in a timely manner. In May, the Board of Education revised its policy allowing students grades 3 through 12 to bike to school. We are pleased to report that bike racks have been purchased and are currently in the process of being installed across our elementary schools. And then since August, Mr. Jefferson, our Director of Culture and Climate, has been working with the New Jersey chapter of Safe Routes to Schools as they work to develop a plan that integrates the appropriate safety protocols for new riders. In addition, we have safety assemblies that are being presented at all of our elementary schools, sponsored by Cross County Connections. So far, Mark Newby School has completed its safety program, and all of the remaining schools are currently registered to participate. Also, in partnership with Collingswood Police Department, on Monday, October 14th, there will be a bike rodeo held at the Scottish Rite. This is actually a student day off. The district is, in addition, is seeking to collaborate with the New Jersey Department of Transportation, its Bureau of Safety, Bicycle, and Pedestrian Programs, to also assist in this Safe Routes implementation. And so in addition, collaborating with neighboring towns in order to reviewing their policies, what works, what doesn't work, in order to help refine what we do here in Collingswood. As well as Mr. Jefferson is partnering with the local police department. They're going to be doing riding tours throughout the borough in order to look for additional transportation concerns or hurdles for the young people as we ramp up. And so we will be making the announcement once all of these steps have been put in place, which will then grant our younger riders the ability to be able to come to school safely, and to be able to park their bikes with the additional physical presence out in town. We are also pleased to announce that we are continuing to move forward with our calls at Parkview preschool expansion. And so through the New Jersey Preschool Expansion Program, we were approved to increase preschool capacity to the tune of 60 additional seats. During the June 24th public meeting, the board approved the 5-year lease for the Parkview property. So this new partnership will allow us to add much-needed, high-quality preschool seats to Collingswood families. So additional details around site launch and the registration process will be released in the near future once we have an estimated completion date for the construction that needs to take place to retrofit the facility for our youngest learners. And so you heard from Mr. Jefferson tonight about the importance of site-based leadership playing a dominant role on our campuses as each campus evolves. And so ultimately our vision for equity is to make sure that all students feel welcome and included, have a deep sense of belonging, and feel cared for and are treated with dignity and respect. And so in reference to one of the questions that was asked of Mr. Jefferson in terms of the goal, the primary goal of restorative practices in schools is to maximize the time that children are in school. But it's also to give schools who are best positioned to make these decisions on a case-by-case basis levels of flexibility to look at students as individuals and to have more tools in their toolbox in order to keep kids in school. We keep the expectations high in terms of taking responsibility for one's actions with the opportunity to reconcile, but ultimately we want kids in the building. Students have no opportunity to reconcile. They have no opportunity to learn better behaviors when they're sitting at home. And so school leaders last year asked for flexibility that would allow them who know their students better to work closely with parents to come up with what are alternatives to keep kids in school but also maintain high expectations. And so we will be releasing the school community resource guide that will be sent out later this week, district-wide, because each of us has a part to play in holding young people accountable but also helping young people learn how to make better decisions with the opportunity to reconcile those relationships. And so Mr. Jefferson also referenced our Student Voice Project. And so we had roughly 11 students that participated in the summer training program. They represent all of the demographics within our school district. And so we wanted to make sure that there was a good representation. And these young people are going to help lead us to a better tomorrow because they are boots on the ground and they care deeply about their school. And so the students are extremely engaged. The summer training was really focused on establishing trust and a sense of community among the student leaders who are going to be driving meaningful change. And so the program facilitators are currently documenting all of the work, and they've already established some critical insights which will be shared quarterly in order to make sure that we're continuing to move and make progress before we get to a cohesive plan, which will be presented publicly. The co-advisors are also doing a terrific job in guiding the students and helping to support them when they have questions on campus. And so would also like to, in the spirit of what we heard from Patrick about Travis, is that last year we made one of our district priorities to enhance our infrastructure in terms of technology services. And so we also sought to improve our Chromebook deployment and address workflow and customer service issues. And so the tech team would like to thank the community for their patience as they continue to work on rolling out Chromebook carts to the high school this year. The team did significant prep work over the summer in order to make this a reality. Planning was based on the estimated numbers from last year. They updated the room counts, and they have spent the last several weeks updating the carts where needed in order to be able to balance out to ensure that all students have access to the digital devices that they need to do their work. We are still waiting for the donated Chromebooks to arrive from the Red Cross. Once that happens, we will have more information available about the take-home devices for economically disadvantaged students. And so we would just like to especially thank our high school administration for working collaboratively with the tech team to address the challenges as we start this new year. We'd also like to publicly thank, as we did last month, the Cherry Hill branch of CMI Media Group. They donated 60 additional flat screen monitors and 5 printers on Friday, which will be distributed to our staff. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. McDowell. Item 9 is student reports. We do not yet have student board reps. Hopefully October, we'll have our first reports from them. So I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Coleman for the Business Administrator Board Secretary report.
All right. Item 10.01 are your August budget transfers. 10.02 are your August financial statements. 10.03 is your student activity financial statement. We do not, because it's still September, I don't have a food service financial report yet. I will have September's in the month of October. And in 10.05, a listing of the purchase orders issued during the month of September. And in 10.06 is a listing of the warrants that will be paid tomorrow morning pending approval this evening. And that is it.
Thank you, Ms. Coleman. Now I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Craig for the Buildings, Grounds, and Finance Committee.
Thanks. The Finance, Buildings, and Grounds Committee reviews all financial statements, purchase orders, and warrants on a monthly basis. Committee also reviews and approves all contracts with outside service providers and oversees all maintenance and capital improvement projects district-wide. Tonight, we are seeking approval of the following items. 11.2 to 11.9 is the Board Secretary's report as was presented. 11.10 is a service agreement for a cybersecurity pilot program, the goal being to increase our cybersecurity protections within the district. 11.11 is approving Huntington Learning Center to provide tutors to the high school paid through Title I funding. 11.12 is the new OPRA request form for the district. 11.13, therapy dogs, no cost to the district, providing therapy services. And then 11.14 is one-to-one nursing services for a student provided by Bayada Home Healthcare. 11.15 to 11.17 are use of facility requests. Short agenda, but seeking approval from items 11.2 to 11.17.
Thank you, Mr. Craig. Can I have a motion to approve said items?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Any questions or comments from board members?
So I think this might be the right section for this. Just recognizing that I think Governor Murphy signed a bill earlier this month, September 4th. And I know Ms. Coleman, you and I have talked a little bit about it, but that has something to do with discussions that came up during the referendum around going out to ask to raise funds from the community not related to facilities, right?
This isn't on the agenda,
Okay.
so I don't think this should be on this section.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, roll call. Any other questions before I call roll call? Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Chu?
Yes, except 11.16 where I abstain. Nothing weird there. I'm just part of the program, so.
Gotcha. 16, right?
Yes.
Mr. Craig?
Yes.
Mrs. Maya?
Yes.
Mrs. Mikulski?
Yes.
Mrs. Seltzer?
Yes.
Mrs. Sharon Celia?
Yes.
Mrs. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Dilkus?
Yes.
All right, I can address what Mr. Chu was talking about. So I know during the budget and leading into the referendum, there were a lot of discussions from taxpayers about like the Robbinsville, those of who have been following me. The governor did hear, I guess, the complaints, and I guess they were monitoring Robbinsville. So just to give a little history of what happened in Robbinsville was there's 4 dates in law that we can go out for a special referendum, right? And that's what we just did for capital. But the law didn't say the word just for capital, so Robbinsville used it as a way to close their budget hole. So they kind of got to work around the law that Chris Christie passed all those years ago. They kind of found a little workaround. So the governor signed into law, get the number, I do have the number here. I guess Senate number 2837, I don't know if it has official law yet. This was recently signed about 6 weeks ago. I have reached out to the county BA. I do have my roundtable on Wednesday because I'm asking them how this works. So basically what the governor did was that those dates in statute that allows referendum, like we just used for capital, they're now saying school districts can use those 4 dates to raise funds for their upcoming school year on those dates. But what's not clear, and the way I read it, and again, the devil's in the details, I don't have regulations on it yet, but they reference the current school funding reform law, which is how my budget's governed, which makes it seem to me like I would still need to have some kind of county office involvement in their approval of the question. We just can't put out a question. I have a budget hole of $1 million. Please, thank you, give me $1 million. The way it reads is the county office most likely still needs to be involved in the process. And how we go about involving them and getting it approved. Because back in 2018, we did do this in our budget. We did a mental health separate proposal. And this reads very similarly to the law that allowed us to do that, right? You're tacking onto your budget for a program. But this, the way it reads is we're asking for money for a program in advance of our budget. So a little bit of Robbinsville with, yeah, you've got those 4 dates, but I'm not quite sure we can use it for the purposes that we would love to use it for. Again, I don't have any regulations yet, and I have asked for the county to kind of explain this at our meeting. I'm hoping she does. I've emailed her twice already. But it's out there, and I'm definitely keeping an eye on it, because this would be, something we want to keep our eye on, like obviously for the future for our budget.
Can I ask one question about that, just to make it clear? This doesn't address what our initial concerns were, that we don't know what's going to happen when the budgets are released next year. We don't know if they're going to pull anything back, right?
We don't know yet.
Because there's nothing in the legislative history that I saw.
Right.
Okay.
Can you? Doesn't look like our fear was Robbinsville was going to get smacked for kind of going around the law. Haven't heard anything about that, but I did hear when all these discussions came up when we were doing our budget that from the county office, they were saying Trenton is very much aware of what Robbinsville did, and they're monitoring the situation. And we did speak a lot to our county representatives, Pam Lampett and the like. So I feel like some of that came out of those discussions with them as well. I don't think it goes as far as it needs to when I just don't think 2%, it's just not cutting it anymore. So it doesn't go as far. And the way it reads is they're still trying to tack it onto a program. So, which makes me nervous because a program, that's people. So the way I read the law, I can't put something out for a separate proposal and risk it being voted down if it has people in it. So again, the devil's in the details, and I just don't have it right now, so I apologize.
Can you review the dates again that we're allowed to go out?
Go out in September, December, January, and March. And you can also tack on to a general election, so like the presidential election, if anybody is so inclined. Not me. But yeah, so there's 4, and then obviously your normal November elections.
And could you just clarify again? So I just want to make sure I understand. So you say that the county has to, we'd have to run it by the county. We had to run the referendum question by the county as well, if I recall.
No,
So
not
could you just
this,
explain the
not this referendum. In 2018, this school district, as through our budget, had a separate proposal question on our budget for the mental health services that we've had in place for the last 7, 8 years. That's what I meant, not the referendum question that you just voted on last week. I'm talking about what we did in 2018.
And I apologize if I didn't word my question correctly. So what I understood you to say was that, again, the devil's in the details, which I can appreciate. When you said that you weren't sure if we were to move forward with that kind of an ask, that you would have to go through the county again and get their approval, and you were concerned about that process, but we had to do that with with just recently with this just passed bond referendum question too. I guess I wasn't sure what the difference was.
No, we didn't have to do it with the bond referendum question. We had to do it with the 2018 mental health separate question. And that did have to go to the county office because we had to show that it was something brand new to our district, and we had to give them the goals of expectations, and we had to show them like a needs assessment, like needs that we were seeing so that they would say, yes, you can do this.
Okay, thank you.
I think the other just aspect to put on there is the speed in which you can do something. Anytime that you have to involve any other offices in terms of approvals, that is going to, the timeline is going to get pushed. And when you're thinking about budgets, even for next year, I mean, budget process starts in October. So in terms of, in 2018, if we didn't have to seek out those approvals, we could kind of move at our own pace, correct?
Correct. What we did in 2018, we tacked it onto our budget. So when we did the budget, it was a separate question with the budget. These 4 dates allow us to do it just like we did last week with the referendum. But then now you're involving your Camden County Office of the Superintendent has to review it on behalf of the commissioner. And let's say they approve it, then it has to go to the Camden County Board of Elections, and they need at least 60 days. So now you're looking 3 months at a minimum, assuming we could all, get all this done. So again, devil's in the details, and I'm a little nervous that they're not rolling it out with information as quickly as I would obviously like it.
And so,
Well, thank you for following that and keeping us up to date on it.
No problem. Keep you posted.
and so just to wrap up, I think, because there was a lot that was said there, basically the most recent referendum had to go through state approval, right? But then this type of referendum for the a budget piece likely would have to go through the county superintendent approval, then the county board of education approval. But also, Beth-Ann, my understanding from what you've said is that there's also no clarity from the county or the state yet in terms of what actually that approval would look like. And just looking at what was previously done, the concern is that this is basically would have to be additional funds for additional programming, and that's what you're trying to figure out right now from the county. And I guess you'll let us know when you get.
Yeah,
clarity.
correct, because the way the law is written right now is when you put something like this out on our budget, right? If it's voted down, the mayor and borough can't come in later and say, well, we're going to give you the money and do it. It's dead. It's done. So that's why we really want to understand their pooling of 2 completely different laws and smushing them together without a whole lot of guidance. So.
Thank you so much, Ms. Coleman, for the update and for, as Kelly said, continuing us to update us on this question. I'm going to turn it over now to Mr. Chu to give us the curriculum committee.
Thank you. The Curriculum Committee oversees and approves the district curriculum and assessment programs, as well as field trips, home instruction, co-curricular programs, and the school calendar. There are actually field trips at all 3 levels. I know I mentioned to individual board members that there were not this time, but I think there were some added. So I'll go through them really quickly. Elementary level, there are a few that are visiting, I think, the middle school. There's actually 2 pages of middle school field trips. I think most of them are for MD 6 through 8 classes. And then there's also some student council, choir, 12th grade and African American studies field trips at the high school level. Then 12.05 is the overnight field trip for a senior class trip, 2025, I think, again, down to Florida. Then 12.06 is our approval for Camden County Transition Program for a few students. 12.07 is out-of-district home instruction placement. And so for tonight, I'm seeking approval for items 12.02 through 12.07.
Motion to approve said items. And a second? Second. Questions or comments from board members?
This may not be an appropriate question for right now, and if it's not, just let me know. I'm curious, we've been talking a lot about, not a lot, but we've been talking here and there about the expense of the class trip to Florida for families. And I mean, I would imagine that this is kind of happening everywhere, right, for a lot of kids all over the country that might be going to their senior trip. We all know that senior class expenses overall are pretty high for most people, myself included. I'm a senior parent right now. So just a question of, like, if we were to start setting up like a plan so that parents could start to pay for this kind of stuff in freshman year. What would that look like in terms of like bank accounts that we would have to set up? Would every student have their own individual thing, or would it be one cumulative thing? Because if a parent obviously puts in money and they pull their student later on, they obviously would be entitled to that money back, right, that they've already put in.
Great question. It would be a lot of bookkeeping. It is possible. Some other districts do allow, they do a payment plan. We do have student activity accounts at every school, and then high school, middle school have a ton of them. So tracking obviously is going to have to be very paramount at that point, whether it's the senior class advisor or whoever is, or somebody in my office. But yeah, we would have to track it for each child. And then, yeah, we have refunded a lot at the end of the school year for people who don't attend or can't attend. So usually at the end of the year, they do get refunded. But it can be done. It would just probably be a little more on our end, setting it up by family.
Is that something we can talk about with like school administration and maybe getting that set up in the next like year or two for the families?
I think we are. It's one of the committees that already came out. I think a finance committee, one of the committees I was on last week, we've already started talking about it. Yeah.
It was a discussion point in committee, but hopefully to have more details and information in
Okay.
nothing we could report out now.
Okay.
I do have comments as well, but similar to what Roger has said a moment ago, it's not actually something we're voting on, so I don't know if you want to vote for first, and it does have to do with curriculum committee, but we can.
Why don't we vote and then?
Sounds good. Thank you.
Any other questions about the items? Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Chu?
Yes.
Mr. Craig?
Yes.
Mrs. Maya?
Yes.
Mrs. Mikulski?
Yes.
Mrs. Seltzer?
Yes.
Mrs. Sheridan Celia?
Yes.
Mrs. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Dulkis?
Yes, except we're required to abstain.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I did want to have this conversation outside of a public meeting, but time could not be made to accommodate me, so I would like to make my comments now. I would like to discuss something that occurred in curriculum committee last week. Dr. McDowell, you informed some board members, including myself, of a situation at the high school, and I would like to say, obviously, I will not be commenting publicly on specific confidential details about any kind of an investigation. However, I am extremely concerned about how these issues were represented to the board members that night. The language that you used suggested a definite hostility toward the concerns of some students and community members. At that time, the investigation was still in process, so the outcome was not yet known. I feel that some of this language towards the concern of parents and students to whom you are responsible was at best, premature and at worst inappropriate. I strongly feel that when a superintendent hears about concerns of students and parents, he should not then describe them to board members in a closed session as a conspiracy or as racially motivated, unless there is specific evidence as a result of an investigation to support those claims. At the next committee meeting that same night, at which I was also present, your tone and language were definitely more measured, and I appreciated that. But when asked about details of said incident, which I understand, you relayed information about a particular student and his actions relating to this conflict. The problem is that you communicated pretty negative details about a student's actions that had not yet been fully investigated, and therefore we had no knowledge of the validity of this account. In fact, your account of this particular student's actions was not accurate, and I know this because the student you spoke of is my son. This entire issue has been very upsetting to me as a parent, but I think that this also brings up a larger board-related concern. I feel that the misrepresentation of information to board members who will ultimately be making decisions about and voting on programming within this district.
Ms. Mikulski, I'm going to step in and note that I think this is bordering on personnel-related issues, and as such, that's not something that we should be speaking about in public.
Well, actually,
This
excuse me.
is
Okay.
about this, you're now speaking about the specific performance of the superintendent, which is a personnel-related item.
No,
And
I am a board member and I have the right to speak. I have checked in these comments with my contacts at the School Board Association. I was told that this was completely warranted, and I want to have a discussion, and I think that that's fair. Again, I would like to finish my comments. I think I asked for this meeting to be held behind closed doors, and time could not be made, so I'm having this conversation now.
I'm advising you right now that is going to put this board at risk in terms of we would not sit up here and speak about the performance of individual teachers either.
Well, again, as this is a conversation that, as a board member, I have the right to have, and I have the right to have questions about this situation. I again asked for it, could not be made available, so these are my comments. At the end of the day, I will wrap up. I'm concerned about the misrepresentation of information. Hold on. And again, considering that this was my child, I know that things were misrepresented. I wanted to have a meeting to talk about this and to have an opportunity to make things right before the meeting, but and I began with our board president to make that request, but that could not happen. So this was a parent action that was made a board action due to comments, and it really should have been first discussed beforehand with the affected board member who was present, who had no idea that this situation had reached this level of district leadership involvement. So my plan tonight was to set the record straight about comments that were made, because quite frankly, the superintendent's voice is the only voice that the board members hear in committee. And I felt that was, my mind was kind of spinning at that time, but got myself together and thought that I would make that clarification. So, thank you.
So, no. Okay.
Okay. We're going to move forward. I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Sheridan Celia with the Personnel Committee.
Thank you. The Personnel Committee reviews all recommendations for teaching and staff employment, considers co-curricular employment, and considers all professional development opportunities for staff members. Item 13.02 is a resignation. Item 13.03 is a rescinded contract. Items 13.04 through 13.08 are various leaves and revised leaves. 13.09 is a revised contract. There is a transfer at item 13.10. Item 13.11 is the hiring of a new special education teacher. She's got 15 years experience. I heard it's a very impressive resume. Item 13.12 through 13.14 are the appointments of long-term substitutes and replacement teachers. Item 13.15 is the elementary permanent substitute, a few of those. Item 13.17 is the appointment of two buildings and grounds custodians on a part-time basis. Item 13.18, social work interns appointments. 13.19, student teachers and their student teacher practicum placements. There are 2 young people this fall. 13.20, child study team stipends. 13.21, secondary staff at CST secondary staff. 13.22, after-school clubs and academic enrichment appointments. 13.23 is high school non-athletic extra duty pay stipends. 13.24 are middle school athletic stipends. 13.25, there's the roster of this year's high school athletic event personnel. There's a whole list of students who are going to be doing it. Goes better part of half the page and into the next page. Item 13.26, fall and winter athletic event personnel appointments. 13.27, the appointment of Ms. Ciletti to come back as an as-needed basis. 13 as a business office substitute. 13.28, the Oakland summer hours for secretarial staff. 13.29, 2024 school-based mental health grant staff appointment. 13.30, building capacity for career pathways facilitators. 13.31, 2024-2025 financial literacy tutoring coordinator, Mr. Roselle. 13.32 is a student teacher observation placement of one of our alumni, actually. 13.33, several substitutes and tutors. 13.34 is asking for approval of a travel expense report form, and this evening I am asking for approval of agenda items 13.02 through 13.34.
So moved.
Haven't asked for a motion yet, but motion to approve said items.
So moved.
And a second. Questions or comments from board members?
I have a question. Given that it's September, hopefully everybody can hear me okay, and I see some appointments for long-term subs. Can you clarify, are these positions that we just weren't able to fill over the summer? Are those positions still listed, as?
No, I think they're for people who go on leave. Is that correct?
Yeah, they're family leaves, so they're just
They need
filling
them.
in for teachers,
So the
pregnancies and the
the
like.
long-term
yeah.
subs that we have are all just for temporary leaves? They're
On
not?
this agenda, yeah.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Roll call, please. Do you have more questions? Okay, all right, great. Roll call, please.
Mr. Chu?
Yes.
Mr. Craig?
Yes.
Mrs. Maya?
Yes.
Mrs. Mikulski?
Yes.
Mrs. Seltzer?
Yes.
Mrs. Sheridan Celia?
Yes.
Mrs. Sherbin?
Yes.
Mr. Dilkus?
Yes, except we're required to abstain.
Okay, thank you. Next, I'm turning it over to me. The Culture, Climate, and Policy Committee reviews all updates and changes to district policies and regulations. We had several policies up for a first read this month, but there were really no major changes to any of the policies. We also have one policy being abolished, which was a COVID-era policy around public board meetings that happened remotely. And we also heard a great introduction about how a recent policy update, the Student Code of Conduct, will be implemented, especially at the secondary level. So we thank Mr. Jefferson again for that presentation and for showing us how this is going to hit the ground. So I am seeking a motion to approve items 14.02 to 14.03.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Questions or comments from board members? Roll call, please.
Mr. Chu?
Yes.
Mr. Craig? Yes. Mrs. Maya?
Yes.
Mrs. Mikulski?
Yes.
Mrs. Seltzer?
Yes.
Mrs. Sheridan Celia?
Yes.
Mrs. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Dilkus?
Yes.
Thank you. Moving on, for 15.01, the HIB reports, we were not in school last month, so we do not have a previous month's HIB report. There was one revised appointment, 15.02, reassigning our affirmative action officer position. So I am seeking approval of items 15.01 to 15.02. Motion to approve?
So moved.
And a second. Questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Mr. Chu?
Yes.
Mr. Craig? Yes. Mrs. Maya?
Yes.
Mrs. Mikulski?
Yes.
Mrs. Seltzer?
Yes.
Mrs. Sheridan Celia?
Yes.
Mrs. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Dilkus?
Yes.
Okay, we have now reached our second opportunity for public comment. I am going to have. I mean, we already voted, so why don't we, if it's something that can be asked after the meeting, I think that would be better. Okay. So, as I said, we've now reached our second opportunity for public comment. I haven't seen a ton of new people come in, but I will just reiterate that this second opportunity is to discuss items that weren't necessarily listed on the agenda. The public is reminded that attempts to resolve all concerns and complaints should first go through the appropriate staff members and administrators. Members of the public are welcome to speak and expected to do so with the utmost sensitivity for everyone in attendance. Again, strict 3-minute time limit. Ms. Coleman will be keeping time and give you a heads up when your time is up. Please remember to state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Mr. Goldberg, music teacher at the Garfield and Tatum Elementary Schools here in Collingswood. I am here today proudly speaking on behalf of the district music teachers, Ms. Carlson, Mr. Gross, Mr. Hartung, Ms. Intricasso, Ms. Ludwig, and myself. It is the mission of Collingswood Public Schools Music Department to provide every Collingswood student the opportunity to grow through a high-quality, ability-appropriate, universally accessible music education that inspires the continuing study of music. Last Friday, Ms. Carlson, Mr. Gross, Ms. Ludwig, and I traveled to each of the 5 elementary schools to demonstrate all of the band and orchestra instruments. This annual instrument demonstration assembly marks the opening of online registration for elementary instrument lessons. 4th and 5th grade families, check your emails for the registration link. Paper forms are available upon request in both English and Spanish. Registration closes this Friday, September 27th. Families in the district free or reduced lunch program are also eligible to borrow a school-owned scholarship instrument. Please note that our free instruments are in limited supply, and a spot on the scholarship waitlist does not necessarily guarantee a scholarship instrument. Reserve your spot on the waitlist by following the directions laid out on the online registration form. If you or someone you know has a musical instrument lying around and not being used, please consider donating that instrument to us so that we may eventually serve a student in need. The market value of your donated instrument is 100% tax deductible, and you will receive a receipt of your donation. We also accept other forms of contribution through our partnership with Tatum's PTA. If you are interested in supporting this instrument scholarship initiative, please reach out to your school music teacher. We are excited to start this next group of students on their musical journey, a path that continues up through 12th grade and beyond. Along the way, students will develop the skills necessary to succeed in our ever-changing society. Anyone who's ever been part of a healthy music program can tell you that music gives students a reason to wake up in the morning, a reason to keep their academic grades up, a reason to like their school, and a reason to like themselves. Most importantly, music is the universal language, not because everyone understands it, but because music speaks directly to the heart, something sorely needed in this turbulent time of conflict that currently plagues our world. What we do in the music department does not happen without your help. It takes a village, and it's thanks to your support on the board and the support of the community behind me that we can continue moving closer to the high-quality, ability-appropriate, universally accessible music program that our students all deserve. Thank you.
Thank you.
Eli, I just have to say, I think you need, like, when you retire, you need, like, to be an announcer on, like, Wheel of Fortune or something. Am I right? Like, it's just,
You
right?
You might have missed your calling, Mr. Goldberg.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Sorry, I just had to say
All
that.
right, thank you.
That's a really hard act to follow. So Kara Boiler, 90 Summerfield Avenue. I just wanted to give a thank you to Mr. John Longo, Miss Camilla Hinson. This past weekend, we were able to plant 45 trees at Sharp Elementary. So I encourage all the community to take a drive-by. We were able to place street trees on the curb strip in partnership with the borough, and also additionally another, I think there's about 12 to 15 on the curb, and then the balance of that is on the school grounds. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And a huge thank you to Kara Boiler for all her hard work at Sharp.
My name is James Kay. I live at 320 3rd Avenue. I'll clarify that. That's in West Cape May, New Jersey. But I'm here tonight to, I was a 28-year resident here in Collingswood. My children went through the Collingswood school systems, and I'm here to speak on behalf of my granddaughter. My granddaughter shares classes with the student who was involved in the incident on the 19th. I heard from her, and you'll excuse me if I get choked up because I've said this a number of times and it still breaks my heart. I had to hear her say, I don't want to go to school, I don't want to die. And I'm hoping that Dr. McDowell and the board, you folks will, in light of what's happening in our country of late, take this extremely seriously. There have been many studies done. People think that children bounce back. Well, there have been many studies done to show just the opposite. Children handle grief much more severely than we adults do. They handle trauma much more seriously. So my fear is that 10, 15 days from now, this student will be sitting next to my granddaughter in class, and she won't want to come to school. Now, the student, I have nothing personal against the student. Obviously, the student needs help, and I hope the student gets help. I don't want to see anybody have to suffer. But I don't also want to see that student sitting next to my granddaughter in class. So I'm confident, I hope, hearing what you've had to say tonight. I've heard it many times. We care about every student in our district. Well, my granddaughter's a student in this district. I hope you care enough for her that she won't be put through any more trauma. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Allie Hegley, 405 Cedar Avenue. First, Dr. McDowell mentioned in his report the issue with the Chromebooks at the secondary campus, so that's what I'm here to address tonight. First, all students are general education students. Our special education students are further protected by law and entitled to rights under their IEPs and 504s, and I'm advocating on their behalf tonight. Since the school year started, I've heard from several families that their child's learning has been impacted by the new room-based Chromebook cart system. Building leadership has acknowledged that there was a shortage of devices this summer and that some classes would be waiting on their computers to arrive. While general education classes were furnished with their needed Chromebooks, special education classes have not had access to computers for the first 3 weeks of school. Okay. This has been reported in tutorial, pull-out replacement, and self-contained settings where many students with disabilities access their academic content. I'll pause to say I think that's ridiculous, but the Chromebooks aren't the problem as I see it. Once you get the 900 whatever donated Chromebooks from the Red Cross, that doesn't fix your problem. The Chromebooks that we're talking about right now are just the latest example of the deep systemic issues facing our schools. When the supervisor of special education's position is cut and the person with all the institutional knowledge then resigns, leaving an entire department with no leadership, you have a management problem. Absent supervision, someone with no knowledge of our students' needs is making decisions about their access to technology, and that impacts their access to their learning. When teachers walk into their classrooms and realize they're without their tools, they need to tell someone immediately. But who should they tell? Their supervisor is now the building supervisor, who has many other responsibilities during the first week of school. When teachers' urgent requests go unanswered, you have a communication problem. Teachers then reach out to parents for support in advocating for access to Chromebooks. So you have an unsupported teacher problem too. Families then learn about what's going on and they talk to their children about it. They learn that their child is often sitting idle, unable to even access Google Classroom, while their non-disabled peers' instruction is largely unaffected. You have an equity problem. Our kids with disabilities are systematically having their opportunities limited, and this is just the next example. It sends a message that we are not a priority. So with breakdowns in management, communication, support, and equity, you are not serving all students. Thank you.
Too many knobs here. All right. Good evening, everybody. So I think the
Please state
Would
your
you say
name.
your name and address?
I'm sorry.
Thanks.
Mike Palucci, teacher at the high school, resident in town, 357 Park. I think the discussions around the fundamental equity needs of our students, compiled with the evidence that they don't have basic things in the classroom, is a really good microcosm for the larger failure of the referendum to pass. And I think that as someone who cares deeply about this issue and who wants us to get facilities and who wants our district to move closer towards equity, I think we need to take some lessons from this. And I'm a little bit concerned with the amount of certitude that I'm hearing from some of the people on the side of the referendum that went down in the vote last week. I think when you're talking about asking for money, a lot of money, right? Because equity is ultimately about money. If you have all the money you need, you can do the most with it, right? And you can get closer to equity. But when you're asking for a lot of money, you're essentially asking to engage in a political campaign to get that money, right? So when you're engaging in politics, you need to build coalitions, right? That's politics 101. Like we can't just exist in our own echoes, our own silos of, even if those silos are righteous, right? Like I share all of the goals that the board shares. I have a social justice background. Like this is not like something, not coming from a place of not wanting our kids to have equity. I served on the equity council, secondary equity council here at the high school. I mean, check out my bookshelf. It probably looks a lot like yours. The point though is that you need to get votes, right? And you need to commit and convince the people in the town that they can trust you, right? And when these things are happening, when there's so much distance between the governing body and the people that are actually doing the work, and there is no trust, and you've heard it over and over again, then it's going to be really hard to convince a community to approve something that requires such a giant leap of faith. Does that make sense, everybody? All right, so when Kelly had mentioned earlier about going to each individual school and having a discussion about the needs of those schools, several people jumped in and said, our goals aren't changing. Well, why would that mean your goals would have to change? To talk to those communities and kind of build a large coalition. We can do this. 90% of the people in this town share these goals. There's no reason why we should have this siloed warring off, and the Facebook superheroes need to chill out for a little while too. You know what I mean? Honestly, we can do this. You have a lot of intelligent, smart people in this town who share these goals. It does not mean that they're against equity, that they're against, repairing our facilities. My classroom ceiling tiles are falling loose. I don't need to be convinced, okay? So let's do a better job of the soft skills that it takes to go out to the community, to go into places where we're not necessarily comfortable and build bigger coalitions for the next time. Because I don't want to see something like this fail again, but I want to see a good plan. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Cheryl Kay, and I am related to Mr. Kay at 320 3rd Avenue in West Cape May, New Jersey. Also a resident for the last 20-some years before that here in Collingswood. Great school district. We loved our kids attending here. And I am a retired school nurse from the last 18 years of my nursing career at Haddon Township School District. I still get the retrospect because I want to keep on top of what's going on up in my old, wonderful, favorite hometown. And a side note, I want to thank these music teachers because and hope you support those programs, because if it weren't for the music programs that I went through in my day, I would never have met Mr. K, because we met performing and playing music together. So thank you all. I have a copy of the retrospect that was from September 20th of this year. This is in context of the referendum that was not passed. But I was particularly pleased to see two quotes in here. One was from your board president, Ms. Caden. And I won't do the whole quote for time reasons, but I liked what she said at the very end. We will continue to advocate for and make decisions that benefit all students in our schools. And then the other quote would be from Dr. McDowell, also in the same article. Very similar. As a school community, we must continue to advocate for and make decisions that benefit all students. And I was glad to hear you say tonight that this is right on your front burner about the incident that just happened, and to review all kinds of safety measures and so forth that can be put in place so that other students, including my granddaughter, can feel safe coming to school again. As a school nurse, I can tell you how many students I used to counsel in my office who had a lot of fears from a lot of different directions that directly impacted their education. So this is really important. And so when you get to that point where you know specifically what kind of safety measures are going to be put into place, I encourage you really to communicate those things to the community in detail. And perhaps that will then help a lot of the feelings that are going through the community at this time. I thank you for all the work that you do, each and every one of you here, all the teachers in the schools. It's wonderful, important work, and thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Hello, I'm Trey Ramsberg. I live at 32 East Coulter Avenue in Collingswood. I'd like to start just by thanking Mr. Jefferson and all of our administrators at the secondary level for their commitment to restorative justice. That is genuinely good, productive, school-level anti-racist work that's actually getting done. I'd also just briefly like to personally commend the various staff members who were honored this evening. They deserve it. Coming, however, from this board at this time, that commendation rings a bit hollow amid labor disputes, amid the very obvious fact that there were plenty of staff members who would be pretty hot contenders for these awards who simply aren't here anymore in ways that are not predictable, ways that are not expectable in a functioning school community. I appreciate the commitment the school board ostensibly has towards progressivism, but I'll echo my sentiments that I gave you last month when I said that even as our goals seem so similar, it's odd that the priorities of the board seem so different from mine. Like up here, during the community of the whole session, the conversation focused a lot on what a shame it was that not much is being done now for elementary school reform, but not a word was said about what a shame it is that we won't have that big, great stadium. The priorities of the board there were pretty shockingly different from my own. I don't want to spend tens of millions of other people's dollars on a new pickleball court for a high school. That's not something I'm going to shed a tear over. I think as a school community that cares about progressivism, we should, number one, fix our labor relations here at the school board level, and number two, commit actively at the school level with actually doing work instead of building and erecting vanity projects in the forms of the best stadium in Miles. We probably should have had honest, real discussions about transportation before presenting a plan that would force students in our poorest communities to cross the pike twice daily. But somehow, a large chunk of the voting population, though not enough to win an election, thought that to be God's greatest gift to anti-racism. We need an actual commitment, and I'm glad to hear it in words, but politicians lie.
Thank you,
and
Mr.
I'd like to
Ramsey.
see actions.
Thank you. Okay. Before we I need a motion to adjourn. I just wanted to see if anyone had, Dr. McDowell or Ms. Coleman, any last words you would like to say before we motion to adjourn? Okay. Then I need a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
And a second. All in favor? Aye. Thank you.